On its surface, the Steam Deck OLED doesn't really seem like that much of a change from the Steam Deck LCD, but let me tell you, as someone who has put well over 1,000 hours into their Steam Deck LCD, the Steam Deck OLED is a lot more than meets the eye. If you're just listening to what Valve says about the Steam Deck OLED, you would think it's probably not that big of an upgrade, because if you go to their website, it says, all the things you love about Steam Deck, now with an OLED screen, better battery life, faster Wi-Fi, and more. And it's that "and more" part that really gets you. Given that this is a mid-cycle refresh, meaning it's more of a 1.5 update rather than a 2.0 update, and generally speaking, mid-cycle refreshes from other companies kinda suck. Think like the PS4 Slim versus the PS4. You didn't get any better performance, it was just a little bit of a smaller package, and the amount of value that I was offering the customer is minimal at best. But I am so happy to say that Valve was massively underselling what the actual changes that were made to the Steam Deck OLED versus the LCD, and it is a significantly better product, and it improved on basically every problem that I had with the Steam Deck LCD except for one, and we'll get into that one in a bit. But probably the most important improvement for me was battery life, so let's talk about it. My biggest problem with the Steam Deck LCD was battery life. I made a video on it almost 2 years ago now, where I said this.
And the worst flaw for me personally has been what I would call pretty terrible battery life when you're playing demanding games.
And yeah, 2 years later, I still stand by what I said. When you're playing AAA demanding games, the Steam Deck LCD's battery life sucks. There's no defense of it, it just sucks. For example, running Elden Ring on the LCD Steam Deck with max brightness and the full 15-watt TDP and the frame rate uncapped, which is generally getting between 30 and 40 FPS, so it's not like we're getting crazy FPS here. But running that test, I got just over an hour. I got 1 hour and 11 minutes to be specific. And before you say, well, that's because your battery is degraded massively and that's why you're getting such bad battery life. That may be part of it. I'm sure the battery is degraded. It's, 2 years old or something like that at this point. But I ran that same Elden Ring test when I first got the Steam Deck, and I got the exact same time, or within 1 minute of the same time.
When I'm playing Elden Ring on battery, I'm getting just over 1 hour.
So while the battery might be degraded, it doesn't seem to have a significant impact on its overall battery life. Now, if we do that same exact test with the Steam Deck OLED, so again, frame rate uncapped, max screen brightness, full 15-watt TDP, on the Steam Deck OLED, I got 2 hours and 27 minutes, which is over double the battery life of the LCD Steam Deck. Now, Valve says on their website, they say a 30 to 50% improvement on battery life, but in that testing, the Elden Ring test that I personally ran, I'm getting over double. So Valve is massively underselling the improvement here. And that's awesome. I would so much rather have a company undersell it and then you get to be pleasantly surprised versus they oversell it and you're like, oh man, it's not as good as I was hoping. And yes, I have a lot of people tell me, well, Sam, that's a worst case scenario. No one is actually going to use their Steam Deck LCD like that, so you're not actually going to get that bad of battery life. And while it is true that you can do a lot of things to increase that battery life, like capping the frame rate, lowering the TDP, or lowering the brightness, the fact of the matter is, that's exactly how I like to use my Steam Deck. I like the brightness on full because, I don't know, maybe my eyes are bad or something. I like having the frame rate as high as I can get it because more frames are better frames. And so while you can say, yeah, just lower some of the settings, I don't like to do that. I like to get the best performance I can, and so that's just what it is. And yeah, that is Elden Ring running in the background on my Steam Deck on the projector, so just for fun. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Elden Ring, I beat Elden Ring entirely on the Steam Deck, and I did a lot of extras. I think I put around 120 hours into it, and as of filming this video right now, the Elden Ring DLC just came out a few days ago, and I'm planning on beating the new Elden Ring DLC on my Steam Deck as well. I just haven't had enough time to get around to it yet. But it's just to say, for all those people that say you can't play Elden Ring on the Steam Deck, I played Elden Ring on the Steam Deck and I beat Elden Ring on the Steam Deck, so you definitely can do it, and I had a great time. And even better than that, while Valve could have stopped at just some simple improvements like the battery and the screen, they improved basically everything. They improved the performance, the thermals, the fan noise, basically everything that I and most people care about, they made positive improvements towards, and we're going to talk about that in a sec. But before we do, if you're looking to charge your Steam Deck on the go, then channel sponsor Ugreen has you covered with their 25% 5000 milliamp hour Nexode power bank that can charge at up to 145 watts. Not only can you easily top out the Steam Deck's 45 watt max charging speed, but you can also top off your laptop and phone all at the same time, all from the same power bank. And if you have a beefy laptop like me with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, you can get from 0 to 56% in just 30 minutes. It's got enough juice to charge my iPhone 15 Pro about 5 times, or the Steam Deck OLED about 1 to 2 times, depending on if you're using it while you're charging and what sorts of games you're playing. I also really like that Ugreen includes this little screen so that you can see exactly what the percentage of the battery bank is, so you just know how much power you have left. And when it's time to top up your power bank and your Steam Deck and your laptop and your phone all at the same time, Ugreen also has you covered with their 100 watt Nexode charger. This charger is remarkably powerful for its size. It can do up to 100 watts, which means you could charge an M2 MacBook Air from 0 to 55% in just 30 minutes. It's also compact, especially when compared to the chargers that Apple is shipping with their products, and yet it also has the ability to charge up to 4 devices at the same time. Also, I gotta say, I love that Ugreen keeps including at least one USB Type-A port for all those cables that just haven't switched over to Type-C, because I know you have them because I have them too, and it's just nice to have a charger that's got you covered for everything. If you're interested in either the charger or the battery bank, check out Ugreen's Prime Day deals, which are up to 41% off. I'll leave links in the description. And thanks again to Ugreen for supporting this channel so I can keep making videos like this one. All right, let's get back to the Steam Deck OLED. So yes, the OLED does have better battery life than the LCD, but one other problem that was actually a pretty significant problem for me with the Steam Deck LCD is the fan noise. Whenever you were doing anything, including just downloading games, or if you were playing games like Elden Ring or whatever AAA games you were playing, the fans were pretty loud. And not only were the fans pretty loud, but the temperatures were also hot while the fans were loud. And for something like a desktop, maybe you don't really care if the fans are running loud and hot, but for something like a handheld where, you know, it's going to be within arm's reach of you most of the time, the amount of heat and noise output is significant, and it does impact the amount of enjoyment that you'll get out of the device. But with the OLED, Valve has completely solved these issues. If you look closely during this Elden Ring test, you can tell that the OLED is getting between 10 and 20% better FPS than the Steam Deck LCD, which that might not sound like that much, but that's actually going to make a pretty significant difference, especially when you're struggling to hit the 30 or 40 FPS cap in games like Elden Ring. And not only are we getting 10 to 20% better performance, but at the same time, the fans are running quieter and the chip is running about 10 degrees cooler. For those of you that don't know, 10 degrees cooler is such a significant difference on something like a handheld. I mean, like that in and of itself, if Apple had made a change like that where their devices were 10 degrees cooler, it would be all over their marketing, but Valve doesn't even include it. They like don't even mention that it's like, hey, yeah, guess what? The fans aren't going to be nearly as loud and it's not going to be burning your hands. Not that it was, okay, that was a little too far. It was never burning your hands, but it was warm. It was warm for sure. So yeah, for me, the biggest improvement is kind of all those things together where it's like battery life, yes, is the biggest improvement, but then thermals and performance and fan noise all kind of run in tandem, and the Valve improved all of those in such a meaningful way that they're no longer issues for me. They were issues on the LCD and things that annoyed me and made me enjoy the deck a little bit less. But on the OLED, they're no longer issues and I don't think about them at all. And one of my favorite parts about the fan noise is you almost don't hear the fans anymore on the OLED, or at least I don't. They do still ramp up, and if you're playing a demanding game like Elden Ring, yes, you will still hear them, but it's not nearly as bad as the LCD. It's much, much quieter. Oh, and yeah, I can't believe we've made it this far in the video without talking about the screen, but the screen is... it is just chef's kiss. The Steam Deck LCD, I'm kind of a screen snob, I guess, a little bit, just a little bit, or I just like a nice screen. And the Steam Deck LCD, it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. You could still play your games, but it was not pretty to look at. It wasn't pretty. And a lot of that came down to the color accuracy, the brightness, and then if we're being honest, I thought it was the resolution, but now we have the Steam Deck OLED and it has the same resolution, but with dramatically better color accuracy and brightness and contrast. And what I thought was resolution was actually those things. It looks to me, this is gonna make me sound silly, but it looks to me like this screen actually has a higher resolution than on the LCD, but it's not. It's just crisper and sharper, but that's not coming from more pixels. I didn't know that was a thing. I know it's a thing now. And like one example that makes it really clear is in a lot of games with the LCD, I would struggle to read the text because it's just small on a small screen like that. But on the OLED, I don't struggle to read the text nearly as much. And I think a lot of that comes down to the color accuracy and the contrast ratio. And I guess I should say it's also about 12% bigger. So having something be 12% bigger is obviously going to make it easier to read small text. So yeah, that helps too. Ooh, and it also has a 90 hertz refresh rate, which is awesome for playing games. A lot of games like Elden Ring, you're not going to be hitting that 90 hertz refresh rate, but what you can do is target the 45 hertz refresh rate, which is exactly half of 90, and then that's actually going to be really nice too. But then when you're playing indie games where you actually can get that 90 hertz refresh rate, like for me, one of my favorites is Dead Cells, or actually right now I'm playing through Hades, which is a really good time, and both those games are indie games where you can easily hit your 90 FPS cap, and 90 FPS does look dramatically smoother, at least to my eye, versus 60 FPS. So that's another change that does really help the overall experience of the Steam Deck. The screen is just knocked out of the park. It's fantastic, whereas on the LCD, it's okay. It also has HDR, it's got lower input lag as tested by Digital Foundry, and people don't talk about this, but the touchscreen is much more responsive, at least for me in my testing. It used to be when I had to use the on-screen keyboard to type in whatever, because sometimes you have to. The LCD version, it was really clunky and annoying to use. It felt like a tablet from like 15 years ago where they're just trying to figure out how the touch sampling rate works, whereas the OLED, it feels much more like a modern tablet or smartphone and you don't really notice it. It also has Bluetooth 5.3 instead of Bluetooth 5.0, which is great, and it has faster Wi-Fi with Wi-Fi 6E, which is going to give you up to 3 times faster Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi isn't that fast, so I wasn't maxing it out in the first place, but I do notice that I get less drops and like little lag spikes when I'm playing online or using Wi-Fi, so there is some improvement there. It's just a little bit harder for me to measure. Also, the whole package is a little bit lighter, and I thought this was going to be something that I wouldn't be able to notice, but every time I have the LCD and the OLED, and just by picking it up, I'm immediately aware of which one I picked up, because visually they're very similar, so you can't really tell a difference visually, at least not from a distance or not if you're not paying attention. But every time I pick it up and I'm like, oh, that's the LCD, oh, that's the OLED, like it's just clear as day. So it does make a difference. But now we got to talk about buying decisions, because when the Steam Deck first came out years ago at this point, it was kind of the only thing in its category. I mean, yes, handhelds existed, but it was the only thing really trying to make its own operating system and trying to make it more of a console-like experience. These days, fast forward a few years, and you have companies like Asus or like Lenovo or like MSI, I guess if you want to include them, and they're all trying to create their own version of, they're doing it with Windows, but they all are creating their own custom software to make it a little bit more palatable to use Windows on a handheld. And so the handheld space is a lot more flushed out than it was when the Steam Deck first came out. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, you have to say, even though the OLED is a significant improvement over the LCD, and it is in basically every way, is it good enough to justify its place against the competition, where its number one weakness versus the competition, I'm sure you already know, it's performance. Its performance is pretty bad when compared to something like the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go. And I bought both of those devices and I tested them immensely against the Steam Deck OLED. And yeah, both the Legion Go and the Ally, depending on the game and the circumstances, get anywhere between 0% better performance and up to 100% better performance. And it is wildly dependent on the game because some stuff isn't optimized and, you know, there's a bunch of other factors. But it's just to say, whereas a few years ago, the performance might not have been as much of an issue because there weren't very many other good options on the market, there are other good options on the market now. So that puts the Steam Deck in a trickier position than it used to be in. So I would say this, if you're on the fence about buying a Steam Deck or a Steam Deck OLED, or if you're looking at buying a different handheld like an ROG Ally or something like that, I would say this, I would look at, if you're someone who plays all types of games all the time, then maybe you just need the flexibility of an ROG Ally or a Legion Go. But if you're someone who mainly plays like 5 main games or 10 main games or whatever it is, I would look at what the performance is on those games particular for the Steam Deck versus the Ally or whatever you're comparing it to. And then if the Steam Deck can get performance that you're okay with, I would go with the Steam Deck. I much prefer the Steam Deck's ease of use, operating system, the way it navigates. I much prefer using the Steam Deck, but sometimes the performance does stand in the way. Like with Elden Ring, for example, I would love to get a locked 60 FPS. I would love that. That really does improve my gaming experience on Elden Ring because you do a lot of twitchy stuff. You gotta react in real time, and so having those extra frames actually does help the experience. But the Steam Deck just can't do it. But if you're someone who plays a lot of indie games, you're playing more like Dead Cells or Stardew Valley or things like that, the Steam Deck is going to be hands down the best option for you. So what I would say is look at the games you're wanting to play, look at the performance on those games. If the Steam Deck has good enough performance for you on the games that you want to play, then pick up a Steam Deck because I do think it's better if you're not constrained by performance. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I can usually get to all the comments. But yeah, the Steam Deck has been one of my favorite pieces of technology in the last decade. It's actually changed my life in some really cool and positive ways, and it's allowed me to play video games in little moments that I have throughout the day, whereas before I just kind of stopped playing video games as an adult because I just didn't have the time to really like sink it in a big chunk of a couple hours at a time. And now I mostly play video games for 20 minutes at a time, and I really enjoy it. And I actually think that's a healthier work-play balance for me personally. If you made it to the end, drop what your most played game is currently on your Steam Deck or on your handheld device. I'm curious to see what you guys are actually playing. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.